it's time to go over some of the finer details.
The Croods, A New Age was released, unfortunately, November 25th, 2020. This was one of the first films that was released post-pandemic in theaters. Like, there were only a few. I feel like Tenet came out, and this was one of the first like kids movies. This was like the first time people sort of started to feel semi-comfortable going back to the theater, but they were still, if you remember, like the theaters were, seats were like blocked off and you couldn't sit next to other groups. And like the fact that it did what it did financially is a miracle given the circumstances of what was going on. But had a budget of $65 million, which is way less than the first movie.
Really?
The first movie cost $155 million.
Yeah.
This was less than half, and I think it's a way better movie than the first movie.
It looks way better. It's written better. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it took a long time to come out. I feel like the first one was, 2013? 2013.
All right, so
7 years of advancements in technology. We'll get to it, but the bulk of the animation was done with people working from home because of the pandemic. The final touches, at least, they had been working on it a little bit before that, but like, it's I don't know. It's a way better film in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
And it grossed $216 million in November of 2020 when if you remember, the vaccine wasn't out. Everybody was still fucking terrified. Everybody was having to wear masks everywhere. Nobody wanted to go to a movie theater, including myself. So $216 million is a lot. Just imagine how well it would have done if it would have come out in a normal release schedule.
$500 million.
Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, the first one made $587 million.
Yeah.
I think this one would have probably done like 700. And unfortunately, I feel like it's hurt its longevity post release too. I don't think people think of it as much as the first one just because they may not have seen it. They may not have gone to the theater and seen it.
Yeah.
So
I didn't even know
it's kind of a shame.
I didn't even know it existed until this season, and you're like, we're doing Croods and Croods 2. I was like, they did a follow-up to the first one? I didn't know. I thought their follow-up, I thought they had a pivot and they just did that Hulu show or whatever, that animated show. So yeah, I could definitely see.
They did a show?
Yeah, there's a TV show. It's Hulu, I think Peacock ended up picking
Peacock,
it up.
maybe, yeah.
And then there's also a Dawn of Croods. I think it's a made-for-TV movie or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a whole franchise around the Croods, and I kind of wonder I hope eventually we're going to get a third Croods movie, because this movie deserves a follow-up. Because I feel like they did... all the complaints I had about the first movie are gone in this movie. So,
agreed.
Yeah. Much better film overall, and a great follow-up that unfortunately... had just really bad timing.
Yeah.
And there was some like behind the scenes stuff that was going on that we'll get into here too. This was directed by Joel Crawford, who is not the person who directed the original. Chris Sanders and Kirk D'Amico did the original. This one was Joel Crawford, who went on to do the new Puss in Boots movie, The Last Wish, which was nominated for Best Animated Feature. But he's only directed a couple things. This and Puss in Boots. That's it, which is kind of surprising. But, he was a storyboard artist before, which we've seen that a lot. He worked on Kung Fu Panda 1 through 3, did that creepy Jerry Seinfeld bee movie. The woman falls in love with a bee.
Sexually awakening movie. Sexual awakening. Sexual revolution, if you will.
Yeah, for some of us. Shrek 4, which I feel like nobody remembers. And then Rise of the Guardians, which we talked about in our last episode.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
It's so funny that you mentioned that about Shrek more because I was just, and the kids had pulled all the movies out of the cabinet the other night because they like doing that. So I was putting them all away, and we have the box set of the Shrek Blu-rays, and I was like, "There's 4 Shrek movies."
It's like Shrek Goes Forth or something like
There's
that.
Shrek 2, Shrek the Third, and then Shrek the Final Chapter, I think is what it's called. So,
yeah. Well, it's not the final chapter because they do it in
I
a
was
fifth
like,
film, baby.
Yeah, but I
they
was
can't
just
leave that thing alone. Yeah.
I was just like, I can't. I swear to God, there was only 3 of these things.
I don't remember 3 or 4. I remember 1 and 2 really well. Remember 2 being great, and yeah, I don't know. I'm sure I watched 3 at some point, but I definitely never watched 4.
Yeah, I've never seen the 4th one.
This was written by, so the story came from the original writers and directors, Chris Sanders and Kirk D'Amico, but the screenplay ended up having 4 different writers. So Dan and Kevin, I think it's Hageman or Hageman. It's a brother writing team that wrote Mystery Men. They wrote the Lego movie. They were the creators of Star Trek Prodigy. So they have a good track record. But then also Paul Fisher, who wrote Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, the Lego Ninjago movie.
Ninjago.
That one either. And then Bob Logan, who is primarily a storyboard artist, again, who, among many other well-known things, has worked on stuff like The Simpsons, Madagascar, Megamind, and Astro Boy. So the story was originally... We had John Cleese was originally working on the original Croods, and then he left, and then Chris Sanders and Kirk D'Amico ended up taking it over, and they came up with this story, I think, and then these guys took it over, and there were 4 different writers. So I don't know, man. It seemed like it was in developmental hell for a long time.
Yeah,
just had all sorts of problems behind the scenes.
And with the success of the first one, it was like, well, they're not going to not make a sequel. So
yeah, exactly.
They probably just did whatever they could to get it fucking made because it was going to make money.
Yeah, we'll get into it in the question.
Aside from unfortunate circumstances affecting the world at the time, but
yes, the pandemic was actually kind of the least effective, like least horrible thing that happened during this production of, I mean, I guess that's not true, but
I was like, what?
I mean, for the production, it was
for production,
the world, not so much.
Yeah. Edited by James Ryan, who also edited Turbo, which was, it's like a snail movie or something.
Oh,
cartoon. Yeah. Boss Baby, Puss in Boots, Last Wish. This is kind of the same crew who went on to do that Last Wish movie, which was hugely successful. Which, like, I remember the first one being really successful, but then everybody's kind of like, I don't know if it's just recency bias or what, but everybody's kind of like crapped on that movie now, and they like, oh, Last Wish is just a masterpiece, and that movie sucked. And I was like, no, that movie did really well. And,
yeah,
and I remember it being really good and actually better than many of the Shrek movies at that point.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, and funny enough, the editor, James Ryan, is also the voice of Sash in the movie. The sloth, the female sloth. The love interest of this masterpiece. At least my love interest. That was the one that I was, Never mind. And of course, music by the great and amazing, we've talked about it many times, Mark Mothersbaugh. You know him, you love him, the legendary lead singer of Devo, who we've talked about extensively. This guy just never stops working, dude. I don't know, like, he is just a fucking workhorse. Like, 275 credits now as a composer. That's not counting the huge body of work behind Devo and his other musical projects. That's just as a composer. 275 credits since 1987. He started with Revenge of the Nerds was the first thing.
Wow.
That he did. And he works, I swear he does like 8 fucking scores a year. The man's he's prolific.
Yeah.
Which, you know,
He's
he's up
not
there.
Meg.
He's
Devo.
That's true. He's got to be in his late 60s, maybe early 70s. He's getting up there. And Devo just did a tour just recently. I think it was supposed to be like their farewell tour, but
Yeah.
that's crazy.
He's like, I can't do this anymore. I gotta do movies. I got 70 more movies to work on.
I mean, I think he lives in Los Angeles, and it's an easy. He just drives to his little studio and he pumps out music all day long. Must be a perfect life for somebody like him.
Yeah,
somebody who just absolutely loves making music.
Yep.
Ratings. This got a 77%, 6.4 out of 10 on 158 reviews. Which seems kind of low, especially when you put it up against the audience score, which is a 94%.
That feels way more accurate.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, 94% versus 77.
I wonder how much of it was just holdovers of critics, just like they had to sit through the first Croods, and we're like, can't believe I got to watch another damn one, because that was my attitude at least to start, and then the movie really won me over. But
yeah. Same.
Yeah, or it's just, if critics just are harsher on kids' movies than they should be because they're not kids. I don't know.
Yeah,
they're probably
it seems like a low
super
score
depressed at the time, sitting at home.
I have to go risk my life to see this movie.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, I wonder if they got advanced screeners, or
I'm sure there was
I'm sure they gotta watch it at home.
Yeah, I would assume a lot of people ended up seeing this on home video, which again, that just really puts in perspective that 216 million that it made at the box office, which is astronomical for November of 2020.
Yeah. How much did Tenet make?
What's that?
How much did Tenet make? I remember that was like the big
not as much.
blockbuster.
We'll talk about it in the quick facts, but this was the highest grossing film up to that point, post pandemic.
Mm-hmm. How much did Pig make? More?
3 million.
Yeah. But that one only cost what, 5, 8, something.
I think that was the first movie I went to see in the theater post pandemic was Pig. Not a shock, but Metacritic score was a 56%, which seems really low.
Yeah, that's really low.
Again, it's weighted by fame of critics. So like if one famous critic shits on it, then it gets a really shitty score, which is, I just don't like the way that Metacritic does. I feel like next season I'm going to change things up and add a few. I think Letterboxd should be on here, and we should start varying it up a little bit more. But I think Metacritic will stay just because it's one of the big ones. But I hate the way they score things. It just doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. IMDb, again, is the audience, the real audience, but only 6.9 out of 10, which is also surprising given that the Rotten Tomatoes score is 94%. I don't know. It's all out of whack, man.
Yeah.
And then the cinema score was an A, which was the same as the first one. Both of them had an A. I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's fair, but still.
For the first one, no, it should have been lower. For
no,
this one,
yeah. The first one, maybe an A- on the first one and an A on this one.
Yeah.